Oh, welcome to the Sharpe Way show. So happy to have you with me at 7 p.m. on the East Coast. Look at me go. Mike, you can't be mad at me. I'm on time. I've actually made it on time, 7 p.m. I know it's amazing, and I have. And one of the reasons why I am so excited about this show is because it's about something that I asked people to wait about a year for. I'm not joking when I say that. I asked people to wait about a year for this. When Javier Milei was elected in Argentina, boy, did people jump on me. He's an evil guy. He's a bad guy, going to wreck the world, or the reverse. He's the libertarian genius. He is going to make sure everything's perfect and it's going to be magic. And I said the same thing then, and I said many times, give me a year. Let him see what's happening. Let him see what's going on. And I said this, he's not going to be perfect. I knew that. He's not going to be perfect at all. Pete jumps on right away. And Pete, we're going to discuss this. So you should listen to this one. Pete comes in right away with 36 trillion, 192 billion, 895 million, $704,983.65, our national debt. And we will talk about that, Pete. So you're going to like the show. So yes. And what he was going to be doing, and I told people, give him a year. He cannot be perfect. It is impossible. How can he be perfect? Right? He's up against a system. He has a broken country. And he's also not a perfect libertarian either. Right? So he's going to do things that aren't libertarian. He's going to have some authoritarian views in him. Of course he is. That's going to happen also. And there's going to be pain. All those things are going to happen. So the question is, do we feel like over the course of a year, it is a win or a loss? And I tried to find a good video to talk about this, if I could, right? To kind of figure out what is the right answer, which video was going to be the right one, because I knew where my head was. And I didn't want to pick a video that was like, he's the worst or he's the best. I wanted to find a couple of videos that kind of went back and forth. And I found two. One's a shorter one, which kind of tries to do it right way. And then one's a more deeper one, which kind of digs deep and does a little bit of history. So I want to start with the kind of lighter one, if I could, and chat about that and see how that actually works and see what you guys think about it. That's what I'm going to try to do today. You guys tell me if I'm screwing this up, but that's what I'm going to start. A review so that those of you who know what's happening, awesome. Those of you who are unsure, you'll kind of see what this is about.
Buying Nebula.
It's now been just over a year since Argentinian President Javier Milei took office. And, well, things are going pretty great for him.
For him, that's true. That's accurate. For him, it's absolutely true.
He successfully flipped both Argentina's trade and fiscal deficits, allowing Argentina to run consecutive primary surpluses for the first time in ages.
Did you see that, Pete? Government surpluses. I knew you would like this part. It starts as if Pete was watching. It's like, hey, Pete, look, we're going to start with some green stuff that you're going to enjoy. So for you, Pete, just for you, something nice.
Inflation has come down from its heady highs, allowing the central bank to finally cut interest rates and hopefully paving the way for the V-shaped recovery that Milei has long promised.
Now, that's the issue. He did promise a V-shape. He said it's going to be bad, and then it's going to be good right after. That's what he said. The question is, are people seeing it? Are they believing it? Is it happening?
But perhaps most impressively, Milei's approval rating has actually gone up in the past few months, with the latest morning consult polling giving him an astonishing net approval rating of plus 37. So in this video, we're going to take...
Plus 37. Plus 37. You know how many American presidents would like that? He's higher than Trump. He is very high. And the issue is, even with things being bad, this is the piece that I bring up all the time. People are like, well, Larry, you understand this, that, and the other. We have to change. And I had, believe it or not, a conversation with Sabrina Salvati about this maybe 6 months ago. She is not a fan. And she's like, he's a bad guy, and he's crushing people and that kind of thing. And what I said was, we shouldn't do anything. The question is, what do Argentinians feel? If they're satisfied and not leaving, that's the most critical piece. And I've said it before. I said when I ran for governor in 2018, my number one way of measuring myself, of successful if I'd won, was, are people still leaving New York State 4 years later? I didn't say I could bring them back because I stopped the bleeding. And if I had not stopped the bleeding, I said, then I have failed. If I stopped the bleeding, then I succeeded. That was my goal. Similar here.
Take another look at Milei's presidency and ask whether his apparent success could be replicated elsewhere. So let's start with a quick recap. As regular viewers probably already know, Milei came to power a year ago, promising to take a proverbial chainsaw to the state in an attempt.
And I want to be clear, this part is actually very similar to what Trump was doing, believe it or not, right? That's why people often mix and match. They're not the same, and there's some differences of clearly they're not the same. But the concepts are very similar in that literally Trump came in saying, I'm going to change everything. And people are like, well, whatever. Okay, yeah. He said, I'm going to take a chainsaw to everything. And they said, okay, yeah, do it. They were so broken, they said, do it. They don't care. They don't care. Yes. So the AC says, were these Argentinians that could have theoretically left or sufficient means to be able to? You'll find out. They bring this up. I'll give you some details on that too.
To balance the budget and bring macroeconomic stability. Within just a few weeks, he had abolished 10 of Argentina's 18 government ministries.
Oh my God, making us
halted the vast majority of public infrastructure projects, and dramatically cut fiscal transfers to provincial governments. He also devalued Argentina's currency, the peso, by 50%, and then implemented what's known as a crawling peg, whereby its value continued to fall by 2% each month as part of an attempt to bring its official value closer to its market rate.
Now, why would they want to do this, right? You would say, why would I want to do this? Because in Argentina, and I'll cover some of this a little bit later, but here's the piece, right? Here's the piece. The piece is he doesn't want to happen what happened before, which is Argentina constantly defaults and reboots constantly. It just survives on debt and more spending. So yes, the AC says, I mean, obviously when they get the guy who says no more taxes, the rich aren't going to flee. But the poor aren't fleeing either, neither the middle class. And if you look at New York State, it isn't just the rich who are fleeing. I put a lot of this to New York State. New York State is trying to go the opposite of him. And New York State is losing all parts, poor, middle class, and the wealthy. Now, the super poor have trouble leaving. That's true, right? Many people are stuck. Some of those are. But the rest, they're stuck in New York. Many of them are leaving. So we're losing all of them. He's losing none of them. AC, none of them. So middle class people can always leave if they want to. They can sacrifice, but they can leave the middle class. He's losing none of them.
This is both to simplify Argentina's currency regime, thereby facilitating more investment, and to force Argentinian households and businesses to import less. These policies had two immediate consequences. The first was a dramatic decrease in GDP, with Argentina's economy shrinking by about 3.5% this year.
And that's a piece that's critical. This was not all good. There was damage done. And people always go, well, he's doing great for everything. No, there is damage here. And the only thing I'm saying is we have to, Argentinians should look at that damage and decide if it's worth it or not. When I was talking about running for governor, people were like, well, Larry, you have to pay off the New York State's debt. It's in trouble. And I said, you're right, but I can't do it right away. What? The state's too broken. I need 4 years before I can start working on the debt. And some people, libertarians, go, that's crazy. It's so broken. It's a fantasy. You just cannot do it. It's so broken. So he has a similar issue. It's so broken, there was pain. So there are people who are being hurt by this. I want to make sure that's clear. Some people are being hurt by this.
Because cuts to government spending meant that Argentinian households had less cash to spend.
Yes.
This also triggered a dramatic increase in poverty, with the relative poverty rate rising from 40% to 53%.
So a 13% increase in the poverty rate. This answer, as you asked your question, AC, what was it? This is what happened. The 13% increase. People were hurt by this. This wasn't magic. People were hurt.
Second, there was a spike in inflation, thanks to the depreciation of the peso. Month-on-month inflation jumped from 12.8% in November 2023 to an all-time high of 25.5% in December 2023, Milei's first month in charge. For context, this would translate to a year-on-year rate.
No, not 14, 40 to 53, 40 to 53, 13% increase.
Which is usually how inflation is measured, of about 1,400%. Now, this was unsurprising, and Milei
Yep.
did warn the electorate that his policies would entail some economic turmoil, but this really was quite an upheaval. While Milei's approval ratings stayed impressive,
And this is why I said don't say anything. I kept my mouth shut because this is when all the people who hate Milei said, see, he's the worst, he's so terrible, he's a horrible, blah. And I said, give him a year and I will then talk. Give him a year because he said this would happen and then it would be good. The question is it being good?
high, with most pollsters putting him above 50%. A couple of months ago, there was a sense that their patience was waning somewhat.
Yep.
His approval ratings were ticking down slightly, inflation was stubbornly high, and the recession was deepening. However, in the past few months, things have started looking up.
Yes,
Month-on-month inflation has fallen from a peak of 25% last December down to about 3% for the past few months.
Now, you might say 3%, that's not that bad. That's per month. Inflation's still terrible in Argentina. However, way better from 25% to 3%. Again, people still hurting, but their alternative was 25%. Now it's at 3%. So while the people are hurting, it's better clearly and still getting better.
This is obviously high by international standards,
Yes,
but
of
it's
course.
low by Argentinian standards. And perhaps more importantly, it's lower than Argentina's average wage growth. Argentinian wages are currently growing by about 6%, which means
I wish ours were.
in real terms that wages are growing at about 2 or 3% month on month, their fastest rate in quite some time. The relative poverty rate has also fallen from its recent peak, going from 53% in June to 49% in October.
So now it's coming out. To be forward, I want to be very clear on this. A lot of people are acting like he's magic. No, people are still hurting, right? It hasn't gone away. So it went from 40% to 53%, now down to 49%. So the poverty rate is still 9 points higher than it was before he took over. So there still is a higher poverty rate. There is still pain. The question is it worth it?
In November, low inflation allowed the central bank to lower its benchmark rate for the first time in nearly 6 months, from 40% to 35%. There are also some tentative signs that the economy is rebalancing towards investment and exports, as Milei
That's a key
had hoped.
part.
For context, GDP is usually defined as the sum of 4 things: domestic consumption, government spending, investment, and net exports.
Well, hold on. AC says, I don't think anybody is confident enough to sustain 25% per month inflation for a long period of time. That was the norm in Argentina. Constantly. Insane amounts of inflation. Just insane amounts. That's why they've gone under. The next video I'll show you, I think the guy shows data of them going under 6 times in like the past 30 years or something like that. So they do it. That's the Argentinian thing, AC. They do that. They go insane spending, insane debt, default. Insane inflation, 25% per month for years, default. That's why their credit rating is garbage, because they do exactly what you just said, and they smile about it. They do it. That's like an Argentinian thing.
i.e., your exports minus your imports. Milei believes that Argentina's GDP involves
Okay, AC, you're saying up by 2%, wages up by 2%, while inflation 3%. No. It was wages up by 6% when inflation was up by 3%. Wages are finally in Argentina going higher than inflation. It wasn't 2 and 3, it was 6 and 3. Wages were going up higher than inflation. Now, get me wrong, that's still bad, but way better than it was. Like, I'm not measuring this against something awesome. I'm measuring it against Argentina. Against Argentina and status quo, this is amazing.
Too much consumption and government spending, and hopes that the coming recovery will be driven more by investment and exports. And, well, it looks like this is sort of happening. In the first 7 months of 2024, the latest period for which we have data, exports reached $45.4 billion, an increase of 14.8% on the same period last year.
Big increase in exports.
While imports totaled just $33.1 billion, a decrease of 25.9% year on year. In the aggregate, this means that Argentina ran a $12.3 billion trade surplus in this time.
Pete, you being happy now? See? He's caring about you. He's scared about you.
Compared to a $5.2 billion trade deficit during the same period last year. Milei and the Argentinian government are confident that exports will continue to grow in the coming years, largely thanks to demand for commodities like lithium and copper, which are required for the energy transition and are relatively abundant in Argentina, but also because of shale. Argentina actually has one of the biggest shale oil and gas deposits in the world, called
100%.
Vaca Muerta, in the Patagonian desert. But underinvestment and chronic mismanagement by the government and Argentina's big energy
What? By the government?
firms have
No.
left it largely undeveloped. Nonetheless, the deposit has already helped Argentina run an energy surplus. In other words, exporting more energy than it imports, for the first time since 2011. And exports will only grow if Milei
Exporting
can make
more
more
energy?
progress on Vaca Muerta's growing pipeline network. While the data on investment is a bit murkier, cash is flowing into Argentinian stocks, and Milei's government says it expects its reforms to attract up to $15 billion in investment next year.
Big money
In
for
other
them.
signs that investor confidence is improving, Argentinian bonds have doubled in value since Milei came to office.
He's actually considering doing something which I thought was kind of crazy, but he's actually considering that. He's actually considering getting rid of the Argentinian peso and just using the dollar as his currency. I'm not sure that's something he should do, but I get where he's going with it. The reason why we do it, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier. He is actually worried that the Argentinian bank will just destroy itself again. Why? It did it 6 times already. He's like, I don't want you guys having a currency. I'm taking your keys away. You guys can't drive. Sorry, I'm taking your keys. You can't drive because you crash the car every 5 minutes. So he's actually considering that. I don't know if that's a good idea, but I understand why he would consider it.
And in November, Argentina's credit rating was upgraded, although it's still 7 notches below investment grade.
Look at that. 7 not. That's how bad, because they don't pay. They just go under. So you invest and they go, we're not paying you. That's like, that's like just, we're not paying you. No. So it's gone up, but it's still 7 levels below investment grade.
This has all been great news for Milei personally. According to the latest Morning Consult polling from last week, his net approval rating now sits at plus 37.
That right there tells me, regardless of what anybody says, he's winning. That's what it says. So the people know that their inflation has been high and still going up. Okay. The people know that the poverty rate has gone up, but going down, and that's okay. They are okay with him. That is my number one issue. They are okay with him. People aren't flooding out of Argentina. We're not getting millions, hundreds of thousands of Argentinian refugees into Brazil or into Chile or across our border. That's not a thing. They're staying. Not just that. People are coming in. They're still coming in to Argentina, which means he's actually winning relative. Again, it's relative to what it was.
About 5 points from a few months ago and the second highest in the world after just India's Narendra Modi.
Yep.
Now, to be clear, this isn't to say that everything's going perfect.
It is not.
The economy
She's
is
correct.
still in recession after all. Nonetheless, the fact that in just a year, Milei has successfully flipped Argentina's fiscal and trade deficits, all while maintaining sky-high approval ratings, is undeniably impressive. Milei's apparent success in Argentina has...
So why did I bring all that up? I just want to give you that was very generic on the things. I bring this up. I have Facundo sorry, let's get this right. Luzuriaga. I am Argentinian, and I can confirm all said is true. Hope returns to Argentinians. I am very happy with Milei. And I bring this up in the past. I brought this up many times, and people ask me all the time, when will we change? When will we change? Not only when things are bad. Things have been bad in Argentina before, many times. When will things change? When this is happening and there is hope. That's the issue. When there is hope. That's the issue. Lunatic says, seems like they're trusting the process. Or they're desperate. I don't know. Maybe, right? Look, for Argentinians' sake, I hope that they're trusting it. I hope that's true. They may just be desperate. I don't know. So, yeah, I do think that's true. Pete says, our money has lost 90% of its value since the Federal Reserve took over the gold standard. Yes. But again, Pete, he has a choice. His choice is give his own central bank the opportunity, and they will blow it up as they've done 8 times, whatever, 4 times before. That's option 1. Or option 2, just give it to America and hope. And so he has not good choices. He has less bad choices, right? He has less bad choices. So yeah. Shelly says, is anyone sad that she has to explain something like GDP? No, this is important piece because people don't get that government spending for some stupid reason as part of GDP. It should not be, but it is. So how do we make a high GDP? High government spending. Go into debt, our GDP goes up. Yes, it goes up 100%. So yes. James says, how much national debt does Argentina have? I just don't know, but isn't that bad because they just went bankrupt? They have erased there so many times. So they just erase it. They literally go, oh, we owe too much? We'll default. We're not paying. That's literally what they do. So it kind of doesn't matter. But I don't know. It is nowhere near as bad as ours, of course. So yes. I hope that makes sense. So the AC says, I mean, if you're getting rid of the Argentine peso, it's not like anybody's going to let you buy dollars with something you're about to get rid of. No? Well, I mean, if you're getting rid of the Argentine peso, it's not like anybody's going to let you buy dollars with something to get rid of. Well, no, that's not how they would do it, right? They would simply take dollars for their oil, right? Or take dollars for something else, right? They just take dollars for something else. And then they'll gain dollars because of that. That becomes their currency they would just use. So yeah, they would just use the dollar as currency. Other countries do it. I forgot. There's a couple countries who do that now. Some countries use a dollar. They don't have their own currency. They just use a dollar. So you can do that. Think about the euro, right? A lot of countries in Europe use the euro. They don't have their own currency anymore. They just use the euro, right? There's no Greek drachma, was it? Drachma, right? There's no German mark, no French franc, right? So yeah, they can do it. Absolutely. So hold on. Andrew says, we've got like 20 different countries right now using US dollars. Is it 20? I didn't know it was that many. So yeah, I knew it was a bunch. I didn't know how many of that. So yeah, I didn't know how many that would be. So yeah, Pete says, when will we default? Could be soon, brother. Who knows? At one point, we're done too. If we don't do something, at one point, we're done. I want to grab this one more. This guy gives some more details into this, which I think is, for some of you who want details, I think this one is a bit interesting. He does some of these and gives a little bit more history behind it, which I think is pretty interesting too. I think you guys might want to hear this one. I'm going to say that what Milei is telling us, what he's telling us is this can be done if we're ready to actually believe in the process, if we are.
According to the economist Simon Kuznets, there are 4 types of economies: developed economies, underdeveloped economies, Japan, and Argentina. And to be clear, he didn't separate the last 2 out because of their quality. A century and a quarter ago, the situation in Argentina was very different to today. Back then, Argentina was the 6th richest nation on earth, with GDP per capita almost as high as the leading economies, Britain and the United States.
Think about that.
And higher than Spain, its former colonial master.
Argentina was in such a good spot. It was one of the biggest economies on the planet. That's where it was, 100%.
The nation's former glory is evident in the architecture from that period in Buenos Aires. Unfortunately, the 20th century didn't treat Argentina as well. Correct. It's possibly the only country that's ever transitioned from being developed to a developing market economy.
Look at that.
A big part of the decline can be explained by political instability, which began in 1930 when a military junta took power.
Now that's the problem, right? During this time, all of a sudden, now they're taking charge and centralized control is taking over everything. Larry, you and your libertarian, you don't like centralized control. Yes, because it doesn't work. Yes, because it doesn't work. That's the reason why I always take big dumps on centralized planning. It doesn't work. That's why. And we see it constantly. So what do we do when we have problems? Well, if we only had more federal legislation, if we only had more centralized control, oh, you mean that worked exactly? Oh, never. Never. Does not work. It is a terrible idea. Wald says, problem with policies and political leaders especially is people think of a tiny effect that doesn't happen in their favor, but will never talk about the long-term positive implications. And I feel like, Wald, to your point, I feel like Argentinians are like, you know what? We've been through all this garbage before. We're all right. We are okay. We're going to deal with this. We're going to look for something long-term because the short-term has been crushing us for 100 years.
Ending 7 decades of civilian constitutional government. The nation endured 7 military coups between 1930 and
I want you to hear that. 7 military coups between 1930 and 1981. Wonder why they keep getting broke.
1981. Juan Domingo Perón, a former military officer who was elected president 3 times, cast a long shadow over Argentina. His left-wing populist movement, known as Peronism, drew support from labor unions, the poor, and the working classes.
Now, this part I want to bring up. This has been an issue which people from the left will get upset. Larry, you tell me that left populism doesn't work. In Argentina, it does not. That's a fact. And it does not work in Argentina. It does not do it. It's not a thing, right? Does not work in Argentina. We've shown this, right? So people keep wanting more. That's not how it works. It does not work. It fails constantly. And the problem is now people think we'll just need more of that.
Peronists won 10 out of the 14 presidential elections.
And I got to grab one more piece here. A lot of people who are actually care about things like unions and things like that, relative to previous revolutions, the unions are quiet. Relatively. I mean, there's still some angry, but relative to this, it absolutely has absolutely just they've walked away. They're not fighting anywhere near as much as they were.
Which they were allowed to run. Peronists favored economic isolationism and stifled international trade, which had made Argentina wealthy in the past, in an attempt to protect workers from foreign competition. This focus meant that over time, Argentina's exports fell as a percentage of global exports year over year. There are, of course...
All right, but now AC says it doesn't work anywhere in South America. South America, the CIA won't let it. There was no CIA in 1930. That wasn't a thing. The CIA didn't have any power until after World War II. And Argentina was collapsing prior to that. So I get what you're saying, but that didn't happen in 1930. The CIA had no real power until the 50s. That's when it began to have power. After World War II, the CIA had tons of power. That's true. Prior to that, didn't. Right? And Argentina was never an anti-American, like, they weren't like trying to stop Americans. So, yeah. But the other part's correct. I mean, the CIA has trashed so many Central American countries. That's true. Not Argentina, though. Milei World, thank you for watching. Milei is doing everything by the manual based upon Austrian econ, Chicago, Friedman, Lucas, all great economists. Yes, I agree. He's trying his best. But again, he's not perfect. But yes, absolutely.
Many versions of Peronism. There's Peronism, Neo-Peronism, Orthodox Peronism, Revolutionary Peronism, Renovation Peronism, Federal Peronism, and Kirchnerism, which it seems is a branch of Peronism opposed by some factions of Peronists.
Yeah.
Government spending has been a massive problem in Argentina over...
Wait a minute. Government spending being a problem? I've never heard that before.
...the years, where successive governments put in place expensive social programs that the country couldn't afford, and more than a third of all workers in the country were employed by the government.
That is a problem. This is my worry for New York. New York, more and more New Yorkers by percentage are being employed by the government. You cannot have an economy if that amount of people are actually working for the government. It's too high of a percentage. It cannot function. It can't survive. And we are moving more and more towards this. The largest employer in America right now is the federal government, bigger than Walmart. It's bigger. It's the biggest one. That is a problem. We should not have that. This is an example for us to see. More people have to get into the private market, and we're not doing it. Not just that, we are pushing people into the only growth is through government spending. Our GDP is growing. This is New York State. It's growing, and California also, by the way, is growing because of government spending, not because of private markets coming in and doing things. That's not why they're doing it. Government spending is the big deal. We see this problem right now.
Argentina, additionally, has one of the most regulated economies in the world, with the weight of regulation growing year over year.
New York State has 200 bills ready to sign to add more and more. Exactly what he's talking about is what New York State is doing. More and more regulation. Here are some of these regulations.
There were, of course, strict labor laws, complex import and export regulations, stringent controls on currency.
New York State has laws on whether you can hire somebody or fire someone based upon their hair. I'm not joking, hairstyle. Like that's an issue. Like that's the biggest thing in America right now, in New York State right now. In New York State, you know what's pissing me off? It's not lack of opportunity, not the kind of job, is that some people who got dreadlocks don't get hired. That's the thing stop that. That's not a thing. Because one guy or gal got pissed off because they thought a guy didn't like their dreads or didn't want to wear that hat or whatever. Get over it, move on. The world's not ending because of your hairstyle. That's an embarrassment. That's the thing we care about. We care about virtue signaling. And we just add more stuff so there's more reasons to sue small businesses out of existence. And you're seeing it happen across New York State. More reasons to sue companies out of existence. And wonder, why is no one growing anything in New York State? Because of this right here.
Exchange and rent controls, but also rules on where you could fly a kite, how artists should dress, requirements that horses wear hats on sunny days.
We're laughing about horses wearing hats on sunny days, but that's a real regulation, and New York State is right behind them on that.
And a ban on feather beds, which lawmakers argued encourage lascivious behavior.
Once you accept in New York State that you can ban stoves, all of a sudden you can ban beds. Yes, you can. We are on our way.
Decades of energy and transport subsidies, which were put in place to protect the poor, bankrupted the country.
Literally what New York State did this year. Remember I did a show on this, how they're doing subsidies for energy? Yes. What he's saying.
And caused all sorts of economic distortions.
Yep.
Left-leaning politicians introduced these subsidies to protect the poor from inflation, but the subsidies were so costly that the government had to print money to pay for them, fueling inflation in...
Pete, don't get mad. Don't get mad. He just said the evil words. He's against it. Pete just got mad. Don't break your computer. He's with you on this, Pete. He's in with you.
A vicious cycle. Argentina has seen decades of economic mismanagement that brought high inflation when its central bank printed money to fund excessive government spending.
What? Wait, who's done that before? Never heard that before. Oh my God. Absolutely. Wow. Absolutely.
Major collapses in the Argentine peso occurred in 1952, 1958, 1967, 1975, 1985, 1989, 2001, and 2018 through to present. In 2001, Argentina defaulted on $100 billion of sovereign debt.
So you ask, $100 billion, they just defaulted. They said, we're not paying. So it doesn't really matter how much money you owe if you're not going to pay? Not really. Not really. Not at all. The AC says, so what you're saying is all those Wall Street folks aren't contributing to the economy. Interesting. No, let's be very clear. Just because I think centralized control doesn't work, doesn't mean I think that now Wall Street guys should run roughshod over the country. Of course not, right? Finance does matter tremendously. Of course it does. It's an important part of any economy, right? Financing things, banking, of course. America has gone nuts over this. America has wrecked financing. And the final straw on it was ending Glass-Steagall. That was the end. Deregulating the bank industry and then trying to somehow counter-regulate it with terrible regulations that only hurt small banks and crush credit unions was exactly the worst thing they could do. So two things can be true at once, AC. I could say decentralized controlling does not work, and we should have Glass-Steagall into place. You can have both. You can have both. Centralized control doesn't mean I don't want individuals to have ownership of the means of production. Does not mean that. It does. In fact, the opposite is true, right? If you have the means of your production, the ownership of your own production, well, then there is no centralized planning. So absolutely, those two things can be true. Both of them can, right? Either way you want to look at it, 100%.
Which was the largest sovereign debt default in history at the time.
There we go.
The country has defaulted 8 times since then, most recent.
Hold on. The country defaulted 8 times. Does it matter what their debt is? They ain't paying. It doesn't matter. My debt's $1 billion, $1 trillion, $1 gazillion. I ain't paying. It doesn't matter. Find me whatever you want. We're going to raise your interest rate. Okay. Make my interest rate a bazillion percent. I'm not paying. Doesn't matter. That's what happens. So, yes, that's the problem. James says, I wonder what would happen if the U.S. government defaulted on its national debt and declared bankruptcy. You would see a worldwide depression. Worldwide depression. Because of what you've seen people even talking about here. How many people who peg somehow their economy to the American economy, or Andrew says what? He said 20 or so countries. I don't know that, but I'm sure he's right. 20 or so countries are using the dollar as their currency. You would watch stuff collapse, which is why I'm always saying we have to find an answer, because I don't want that collapse, right? Sadly, that may be the only way. I don't want that to be the only way, but I could see it. I definitely could see it. So I want to grab a couple comments off of Rumble if I could. Americua says, all systems, economies have a carrying capacity, no matter the political system. Also true. Yes. And theirs just falls apart. This falls apart. Kim says, when my debt gets too high, why can't I print myself some money? I'm with you, Kim. I'm going to print some Sharpies. That's not good. Sharp dollars. Larry bucks. Sharp bucks. Whatever. I got to call it something. I don't know what. I could call it a peso, I guess. I got some Germany. I call it a mark. Maybe I'll call it the sharp mark. How about that? Yeah, I love it. Let's do it. The sharp mark. That sounds kind of, I don't know. I need 4,000 sharp marks to pay for this. Maybe. I'm not sure. We'll see. Anyway.
In 2020. Last year, GDP per capita was 11.
Oh, I love it. Larry Loot. That's it. I see. That's it. Larry Loot. I'm making my own money. Larry Loot. Liberty says, I came in late. I'm on 1.5 speed. How can you listen to me at 1.5 speed? I am one of the fastest talking New Yorkers any of you've ever heard in your life. And you know that's true. Me at 1.5. Can you even understand what I'm talking about? I don't know. You have to have I don't know. Was it the bionic woman who had the bionic ear? Maybe you got to have one of those. That's the only way I could see it. So, yeah.
1% lower than it had been in 2011, and inflation was over 211%.
211%.
Javier Milei was elected, an unusual politician who campaigned with a chainsaw, saying that he would chainsaw government spending and regulation.
This is real.
He smashed up styrofoam models of the central bank. He said that he would close multiple government departments.
Político y deporte, afuera.
Afuera.
Ministerio de Cultura, afuera.
Afuera.
He has a superhero alter ego called General ANCAP.
He's a superhero too.
And he said that he would dollarize the economy. So now that he's been 1 year on the job, let's look at how he's done.
Now, before we go there, the part that I think matters for us right now in America, two things. Number one, a lot of people are getting upset. I'm sorry, a lot of establishment pundits are getting upset because of who Trump wants to put into his cabinet. I get it. It's the establishment people don't like it. But the average American doesn't care. They're like, whatever. Okay. They're okay with it. I know people tell me all the time. And I see people who are just talking with me out in the street. I live in New York City. A lot of people do not like Trump. Here in New York City, a lot of people do not like what he stands for. A lot don't. I find it often. And they'll say, they're like, I can't believe you're okay with Trump winning this thing, Larry. I can't believe you're okay with it. Like, why aren't you angry? I said, what? I mean, Harris instead, what do I care, right? No. He's going to put, and then they'll say something like, he's going to put Hegseth into the Department of Defense. I'm like, okay. He might destroy it. Americans don't care. The system doesn't work for us. The system doesn't work for most Argentinians. Before he came aboard, it was 40 some odd % poverty. Before he came aboard, with no chance at all of it going down, only going up. They had 211% inflation and going up. Well, here's a guy who says, I'll make it go down. All right, let me make it go down. Fine, just do it. I don't care. What's going to be? They've defaulted 8 times. in the past 25 years. Do you think anybody cares? Can it be worse than a ninth default? It can't be worse than burn it down. Don't care. That's what we should be thinking about now.
Before we dig into that, let me tell you about this week's videos.
Well, I don't want to talk about the video sponsor. I'm going to go past the video sponsor part.
Unlock further savings. Milei, a self-described anarcho-capitalist, won the Argentine presidential election last year.
Now, here's the part I want to bring up for libertarians. Libertarians will say, see, this is why we should run as hardcore ANCAPs. That's not how it works in America. We haven't gone bankrupt 8 times. We aren't at that spot yet. The furthest we can go is someone who yells like Trump and maybe an RFK Jr. type. That's about as far as we can go right now. Does that mean we're not on our way? We are. How do I know that? The DOGE, D-O-G-E, the Department of Government Efficiency, is, as you probably heard, bringing on some people like Thomas Massey, some people like Ron Paul to talk about things. Now you might go, Larry, but they're not in the, you're right, they're not in the government yet. I agree. But they've moved to that level to where before they were nowhere near that. Now we're almost there. We might get to that spot. We're just not there yet, but we are on that level. James says, you're right, Larry. Most of us don't give a hoot who's in Trump's cabinet. Yep. Though I will say the only person in the new cabinet who can't be trusted is Lee Zeldin for obvious reasons. That's funny. Yes. Kim says, now I don't feel bad for filing bankruptcy 7 times. See, only 7. Argentina did 8. You're better than Argentina, Kim. You are literally better than Argentina. Yes. Andrea says, everyone hit, smash, elbow, or body slam the thumbs up button. Yes, please, guys, do that if you would. Please click the button known as like. I know I bug you every time because this kind of stuff, gets trashed constantly. Please click the button. It does matter wherever you are. If you're on Facebook or Twitter, please share it. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, remember, they do unsubscribe. And by the way, I found out something. Someone told me this. I forgot who did. You're listening. You're going to remember who told me. Someone did tell me this, that sometimes YouTube will look at whoever hits the like button early within the first 60 seconds, assume they're a bot, and unsubscribe them. I don't know if that's true, but someone told me that, and it sounds right. So if you hit it early, hit it again, or subscribe again, because that's when they think you're a bot. So as I said, I wasn't joking. YouTube just unsubscribes people. It decides they're bots and does it. So please subscribe again, click notifications, all the things, whenever you can. If you want to super chat me, it goes right to the front, right to the front. If you want to super chat me, please feel free to super chat me. It always helps out. And membership is cool. For those of you who know, we had a membership show last night. Can't be on a membership show if you're not a member. So you can become a member if you want to. Click that button on either YouTube Larry Sharpe or YouTube Sharpe Way, either one. Become a member, and every month we'll do a member show. You have a shot of coming on. Andrea was on yesterday. Yes, she was, and she was wonderful. Thank you for joining us. So thank you for that, Andrea. All righty. That's talking to AC. Sorry about that. Let me keep going.
With a lot of showmanship, but also a serious economic program that's been described as the most radical dose of free market thinking since the days of Margaret Thatcher. While the media have frequently described Milei as being Argentina's Donald Trump, other than that they both have a background in television, distinctive hairstyles, and a hatred for anything woke, the two men have very little in common.
And this is the part I want to bring up too. They're not the same person, right? Trump is not a libertarian, right? He's not. Some of you will be unhappy to hear that. Does he have some libertarian views? Absolutely. RFK Jr., not libertarian. Does he have some libertarian views? Absolutely. They have some libertarian views. That's true. But neither of them says they're libertarian. Neither of them is libertarian. Milei actually is. Right? Milei actually is a libertarian, calls himself one, is one. That's the difference. You can find some libertarian views in RFK Jr. You can find some in Trump, but they are not libertarians. He actually is one. There's a difference. I want to make sure that's clear on everybody. There is a difference. So yeah, let's keep that piece in mind. Shelley says, Andrew did a great job last night. Absolutely. Yes, she did. Thank you for that, Andrea. I appreciate that 100%. All righty. Let me grab here. John says, I like Kat Tim's take on Hegseth. What's so crazy about having a combat veteran in Washington outside instead of a Washington insider who makes money from war? Yeah. But yeah. The AC says the idea of them reconstructing the military to be loyal to Trump instead of the Constitution kind of worries me a bit. Yes, but there's a logic behind that. Not that I'm saying it's good or bad. I'm not saying that. I don't think they can do that. And let me explain why that's true. The way the system works, there are many good things about the American system and military system, many good things. And one of them is constant reorganizing and changing of leadership. Back in the day, and in many armies even to this day, officers retain leadership within units. So you come into a unit, you're a lieutenant, then you're a captain within that unit, then you're a lieutenant colonel in that unit, then you're a general of a larger unit, but in the same unit, people know you, blah, blah. They become very loyal to you. Very loyal to you. And if you swear allegiance to whomever, Trump or Milei or whomever, or to the AC, then all those people are loyal to you by default. That's not how that works in our military. We're always swapping. So I was in this unit, and then 2 years I'm in that unit, and the people are different, and the officer corps swaps and swaps all over the place, and many of them get promoted. And sadly, the bad part, which winds up being a good part, at least half of the general officers that we have don't actually have commands. Most of our officers in the American military can go away tomorrow. At least half of them can be fired tomorrow. Nobody would know. We have more generals now than we had during World War II. I'm not joking. More generals now than we had during World War II. We just dump half our generals tomorrow and nobody would even notice. Most of them are paper pushers. So we can just dump them. So I'm not that concerned. I don't think that will actually happen. That's him talking trash. The individual people who are loyal to Trump are already loyal to him. So I don't think that's an issue. I'm not that concerned. Now, if Trump decides to stay more than 4 years, then I would be concerned. If that doesn't happen, I don't care. It's not a real thing. It's that's talk that people make that they're afraid of. But when's the last time we had generals do that? I mean, that's not a thing. That's not how America works. It simply hasn't been. The military isn't set up that way. Remember, the most loyal officers to America, particularly naval officers, I've been before, are based on tradition. This matters. A lot of these officers are literally ideologues on the tradition of the military and the Constitution. And many of them would literally sacrifice their lives for it. I'm not making this up. If you're going to be a Marine officer for 30 years and you lead troops, not that you're a paper pusher, and you lead troops, many times you are slavishly loyal to the Constitution. And you would literally sacrifice your life if need be. That's a common thing. So I'm not that concerned. I don't like it, but I feel it's more talk than real. That's just my view on that. I know you might disagree. That's my view.
They do, however, speak well of each other. And Milei
True.
says that he sees Trump as part of the broader fight against socialism. Milei was the first foreign leader to meet Trump after his presidential victory in November, and Trump called him a great gentleman and a MAGA person.
He's a great gentleman. He's MAGA.
Argentina.
He's MAGA. Make Argentina great again. It's true.
Yep.
Now, while Trump worked his way up from serving fries at McDonald's just a month ago to the highest office in the United States with promises of economic protectionism like tariffs, Milei argues instead
he
for
hates
free
tariffs.
trade and has been slashing subsidies and tariffs in one of the most protectionist countries in the world in order to control the triple-digit inflation that he...
Think about that. They're very different in this regard. They're not the same. So, Fertavella says, for anyone who didn't know, Milei used to be a socialist. He admitted in an old interview. In his young age, then eventually changed libertarianism as he got curious to understand what was going on with, and I'm assuming he means the hyperinflation we had. Okay, so I guess that means you're Argentinian too. So yes, that's not uncommon. That is not uncommon at all, right? A lot of people who are libertarian now used to be socialist. That's a common thing, right? You, with the information you have and the experience you have, I could see how people could think socialism was a good idea. I could see it. And the best example I give all the time, right, is a recent one. Libertarian guy ran for president, Dr. Rectenwald, right? Absolutely. Thomas Sowell is my favorite one. Thomas Sowell was an open socialist until he met Milton Friedman and then worked for the Department of Labor and went, this is garbage. This is terrible. The only answer is libertarianism. And he's brilliant. The guy isn't all of a sudden not smart, right? Thomas Sowell is brilliant. And he was brilliant back then. But with the information he had and the experience he had, socialism made sense to him. Then he got new information, right? Then he got new everything. Well, he changed. And he goes, Thomas Sowell was so, yes, it's not uncommon. It happens often. Many people who are socialists have become libertarians. It's not, once you actually watch how socialism tends to actually work in practice, when you watch it in practice, then you start seeing, yeah. So the narrator is not some rando. He is not. He is a guy who talks about economics and politics often, and he was someone who I thought gave a decent start, which is why I wanted him I used him because he has a decent start. He explained some things.
Inherited. Argentine media has reported that Milei will be seeking a free trade agreement with the United States once Trump takes office. While both men are outsiders to traditional politics, Milei has almost no support in Congress and had to negotiate every initiative with opposition parties.
And that was my part I wanted to bring up also, right? Is that he had to negotiate. So some people might be upset here or there, but I do think he has to negotiate. And so does Trump. I've been telling you this too. He also has to do it. They all have to.
Trump, on the other hand, will have full control of both houses of Congress. A year into his tenure, Milei has managed to slash government spending, which is now 30% lower in real terms than it was when he took office a year ago.
Now that is impressive, right? That's impressive, that not having the Congress and still being able to do so. That means the people are with you because the Congress is not fighting him as much as they could be. Why? Because then they lose their seats. I've been telling you guys this forever. What congressmen care about more than anything else is their power. If they think they're going to lose their seat, they will shut up. And they are basically doing so because they know right now he has a mandate.
Cut the number of ministries from 18 to 8, halted almost all public works, and ended most transfers to provincial governments.
So he stopped the handouts, and they are still behind him. He stopped the government jobs, and they're still behind him. Now, when they saw that, even the unions started backing off. And initially, unions were all over. They were having all kind of fights. And all my left-leaning friends were like, see, he's horrible. I was like, just give him a year. Now, unions are like, well, I think I'm just going to be quiet here and see what happens. They've all of a sudden started saying nothing. Now, they're not behind him. They have been like, yay, we love them. They just kind of get quiet now.
In his first month in office, he managed to run a primary surplus, meaning that he brought in more money in taxes than the government spent, and he has managed to do this every month since then.
Could you imagine America doing that? Could you imagine America doing that? Unheard of. Vivek says, I guess I'm one of the greats. I guess you are. I was a progressive, and now I would characterize myself as libertarian right. Well, there we go. There we go.
Running a surplus like this eliminates the need for the central bank to finance government spending by making transfers to the government, which in Argentina are always announced as being temporary, but are rarely paid back until money is printed. This primary surplus is a huge improvement
100%.
And comes after more than a decade of uninterrupted deficits. This is quite remarkable in Argentina. Milei's signature achievement is that inflation has fallen sharply over the last year.
And there's the issue. It was high. It is now better. I keep bringing this up.
Argentina's monthly inflation rate declined from 26% last December to 2.7% as of the last reading in October. Now, 2.7% is by no means low. That's a
So I do want to make sure that we're clear on this. He is not perfect. This is not going great. It's going better. That is my response. It is going better. That's what I'm saying.
Monthly figure, not an annual figure. So it translates to over 37%, a Turkish level of inflation. So Argentina is by no means out of the woods, but at least the direction of travel is correct. This reduction in inflation is the main reason that Milei has held on to his popularity, which at 56% is higher than his last two predecessors.
Look at that. Again, that's my point. The people are backing him. I know I keep saying it, But the people keep two different people telling you the same stuff. The people are
approval
backing
rankings after their first years in office. Cutting inflation was his key promise to voters, and so far he's delivered on it. His popularity has in fact been rising in recent months, which is very unusual for a president who's cutting spending as severely as he is.
Yes. Tavella says, last reading of November is 2.4. Next year, we should be reaching 1%. If you're at 1%, I mean, that's amazing because wages by percentage are going up. The Argentinians can actually catch up eventually. Hopefully, we can hope Argentinians can actually catch up eventually. That'd be nice. I would love for them to catch up.
Voters in every country hate austerity, but Argentinian voters who have grown accustomed to outsized government handouts would be expected to hate it more than average. At present, they seem to be willing to tolerate the pain with the belief that things will be better in the future.
It's the hope I
Days
talk about.
after taking office, Milei devalued the Argentine peso by more than 50%, causing the already sky-high inflation rate to rise even higher. He announced cuts to energy and transportation subsidies, cancelled public works projects, and began cutting government jobs to reduce spending, saying if we continue as we are, we're heading towards hyperinflation.
Now, I got to be clear on this. This hurt a lot of people. There were a lot of people who were surviving on those government jobs, and now they don't have jobs. I know people will always say government jobs aren't real jobs. Yes, they are, libertarians. They're jobs that pay people's bills. And if you have a government job and it pays your bill, it's a real job. So stop with that stupid talking about the government doesn't make jobs. Yes, it does. Lots of them. It also makes inflation with those jobs, but it is a job. It pays people bills. So all of a sudden, those were gone. That's going to hurt people, right? So this isn't perfect. I'm saying better. Lynn says, for anyone who may be interested, Milei did a long interview with Lex Friedman, and he explains how for years he self-studied economics from famous economic authors. Milei mentions all of them. Well, there we go, guys. Check out Lex Friedman and Milei. You can check it out if you want to. Thank you for that, and I appreciate that.
There is some real pain associated with this shock therapy.
100%.
It doesn't get called shock therapy for no reason. Argentina's economy is expected to have contracted 2.6% in the third quarter of 2024 compared to a year earlier, with this being the sixth quarterly decline in a row. While the figures have not yet been released, it looks like the economy expanded against the prior quarter, meaning that the recession may be over.
Possibly, I hope
It's no surprise that GDP has fallen in Argentina, as when you slash government spending by 30% and government spending made up almost 40% of GDP.
Think about that. The government spending made up 40% of GDP. Jesus Christ. How can your economy survive? It can't, and it didn't. 8 defaults. The government makes public sector jobs, business creates private sector jobs. Correct, yes, right. But the other thing that happens, though, is with that in mind, right? If the government is spending money on the private sector, they're private sector jobs, but funded by government. That's even worse. And New York State does that constantly. Yes. Pete says any inflation rate above 0 means your money's worth less. Yes, but again, Pete, we're linking this not towards perfection, which I guess 0 will be perfection. You're correct, but against they had triple-digit inflation, so we're measuring it against what they had before. If my choice is 211% inflation, and you'll give me 30%, okay, like I'll take it, right? And if my inflation rate is going to be at about 4%. Or 3%, and my wage increase is going to be at 6%, I'm even happy because maybe one day I could actually catch up. So maybe, yes, I hope to catch up. Fertavella 65 says, oh yeah, I work with my father at a body shop. January, February, March, April was crap. Now we are kind of okay. Still a long way to go. Yes, I mean, we got to keep going. I'm with you. And again, small businesses coming back, that's the key. That's the entrepreneurial spirit that every country needs.
GDP has to fall. The Argentine economy is expected to finish the year 3% smaller than it was when Milei took office last year.
Some pain.
And should it hit JP Morgan's growth forecast of 5.2% for next year, that would only bring GDP per capita back to where it was in 2021.
Yep.
For many Argentinian workers, Milei's cuts have been extremely painful. He's laid off more than 30,000 government workers. And
that is a lot of people be out of work, right? That's a lot. That idea of getting rid of 30,000 jobs is going to hurt. I mean, that's really it. It's going to hurt.
Slashed spending on health, welfare, and education. Spending on public salaries and universities is 20% lower this.
So he's cut salaries of public universities too. Yosh, take care of that. I love that. Absolutely. So Lorenzo says, I saw this video. I had like 6, and 6 of them were all good. They all were good. This guy gave most detail, and the first one I did was the quickest one. So I had the quick one and the detailed one. That's why I grabbed the 2, but they're all kind of the same. They're all kind of the same, right? John says, U.S. federal government's almost definitely over 40% GDP once you add state, local, and Fed. I don't think the federal government's over 40%, but I think maybe if you add the rest, it might be. Actually, I'm not sure. Sheridan asked that question over at on Rumble. He asked, what percent of GDP is U.S. government spending? I think if you added state, local, and federal, you'd probably be right. But I don't think federal. I think federal by itself is not. I don't think so. Last I checked, I remember federal was, I think, 1/6, if I'm not mistaken, 1 in 6, which whatever percentage that is. That about 15%, 16, is that about right? I don't know what my percentage is. Someone do some math for me. I think it's like 1/6 was the federal last time I checked, which is not 40%. 40% would be 2/4, 2/5. Sorry, 2/5. So I don't think it's that at all. So
this year in real terms than it was before he took office. He eliminated price controls and subsidies that made public transit, heating bills, and groceries cheaper, leaving more people struggling to make ends meet.
Yep.
Argentina's poverty rate reached almost 53% in the first half of the year, up from 42% at the end of last year.
42.
This is more than double the 26% it was back in 2017. The biggest savings in terms of government spending have come from holding down the real or inflation-adjusted value of pensions.
Pensions are a huge issue. We have it here in New York State. We are paying people $300,000-$400,000 a year, and they live in Florida. So we're giving them their percentage, their dollars, and while we give them all these dollars, they're not spending them in New York State. Now, I'm not saying you should get your pension, but New York State has screwed up our state so much, they're not spending it here and helping the New York State economy. Again, not mad at them. We screwed up. New York State should make it to where you want to retire in New York State, not go to Florida, and spend your pension here. That's what I would like you to do, but we don't do that. So it is terrible. We screw this up, and they have the same problems, right? They have cut all these things, and still somehow people are satisfied, right? Not just that, he ended rent control. He ended rent controls in Buenos Aires, and guess what happened? Rents went down. Yes, rents went down. New York City's had rent control, and we have the highest rents in the goddamn country. We have rent control since the 40s, and we still have it. We don't learn our lessons. End rent control. Prices go down.
About 35% of the spending cuts came from a decline in pensioners' purchasing power.
Yep.
Another 25% came from reducing investment in infrastructure programs, and the remaining 40% came from a mix of measures like cutting subsidies, cutting transfers to provinces, and downsizing of public staffing levels. According to the Financial Times, one of Milei's biggest political advantages is the lack of reasonable alternatives in Argentina.
There's the issue. They're like, what else do? We got no shot. We can't do anything. It's him or nothing. Yes. So Straight In says, my lady wants to spend her pension in Argentina. You know, about a year from now, it might be a good idea, Straight In. Just saying, it might be. Yes. Liberty Death says, any government price control automatically makes things more expensive. Every single time without exception. Every single time without exception. That's how it works. 100%. It is a problem. Yes. Andrew says, to make the state less screwy, why not split up upstate and lower New York? Here's the reason why. People in New York State think it's New York City. It's not. It's all the cities. Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, Ithaca, Albany. They all think the same as New York City. In fact, if you got rid of New York City, pulled it out of the state, New York State is still blue. It's still blue. That's how it works. So I get the idea. It's just not going to work.
Argentina, people appear to be okay with putting up with the economic pain as long as they're seeing results, which they have been seeing so far. The people who voted for him are saying, let the madman get on with it.
Yes.
Argentina is home to more than 3,000 labor unions, and roughly 40% of the country's workforce is unionized.
Think about that. 40% of the labor force is unionized. We're nowhere near that in America. So you would think these unions would be fighting him left and right. They're not.
The unions have held surprisingly few strikes since Milei took power, and some leaders say that they've struggled to draw the mass participation they'd hoped
People like
for.
it ain't working.
The FT interviewed the head of Argentina's construction workers union, who admitted that society holds the unions partially responsible for the economic crisis.
Did you hear that? All you guys who think the only answer is public sector unions. No. Private sector unions are fine. Public sector unions, because they don't negotiate with the people, because they negotiate with corrupt politicians, right? If they negotiate with the people, it'd be fine, but they don't. They negotiate with the politicians who want their votes. So they go right side, as his words are, alongside politicians. If we had a strong private sector union and or unions, as I've talked about before, public sector unions should not be negotiating with mayors and governors because they're just gonna by default buy them. They should be negotiating with the people, and all of their contracts should be through ballot initiatives. The people should decide how they deal with it. That would change everything. That would make us have actual unions that are supported by the people and the population, not supported by corrupt politicians. That's why they fail, and that's why they think that. That's the reason. That's why they think that, because public sector unions are hand in hand with governors and presidents and mayors. When they should be responsible to the people, it would change everything. AC says we're at 6 or 8%. Yeah, it's far lower, far lower. We need to have more responsible unions, or otherwise, this is the future. You're seeing it already. You are seeing it already. In New York, you're seeing people going, I hate teachers unions because they control everything. You're seeing people begin to hate unions more. There are now organizations who are trying to fight you from joining a union not because they don't like the unions, because they think the unions control the government. That's happening here. Everything you're seeing in Argentina, the beginnings is here in New York State. You're seeing it already. This is the future. Fair Tabella says, fun fact, some now union workers are starting to support Milei, and these strikes are starting to lose power. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Morgan says, the people decide. What a concept. Exactly. Yes, exactly. Daisy says, I can just imagine Ansville's bows. Do you want all the police to leave? That will be fine. AC, if that will be fine. If the police union in your city, or the sanitation workers union in your city, or the teachers union in your state, or whatever, if they believe that they should have X, Y, and Z, most people support their unions. Most people in any given area support their police force, support the teachers. Most do. Most people, particularly in New York State, again, they know union workers. New York State is the most unionized workforce in the country. New York State has the most unionized workers in the entire country by percentage, the most. So most New Yorkers know somebody who's part of a union, if not many. Well, they'll decide. Now, if they decide that they would like the police to be more community policing, they'll get that. And I'm not mad at that. You should be policed how you want to be policed. If they want more cops on the street, they'll do that. Right now, what does the average person, how can they control their police force? They can't. They don't. They have almost no say in the police force right now. None. Or sanitation, or teachers. Do you think if the teachers union had to negotiate with the people via ballot initiative, they'd be able to not fire teachers? And what happens in New York City? Hundreds of them sit in gyms getting paid to do nothing? You think that would exist? Of course not. They would say you're firing the teachers, or we're not giving you your your new contract. 100% that would happen. That's what would happen. So it'd be way better, 100%. So any case, I do think it'd be way better for that. And again, and say I'm wrong, and they just go, yes, get rid of all the cops, whatever. Then it would still be local police unions deciding that, and some group of people say we don't want any cops, whatever they say it. Awesome. Then does it work or not? If it doesn't work, no one else will do it. They go, this guy's got rid of the cops, and the bad guys took over. Okay, don't do that. It was stupid. Or the reverse. Maybe they're right. And in their community policing works perfectly, and they don't have to worry about it. Why do I decide? I go back to my centralized controlling piece. I don't want to control centrally. Let people get the policing they want to get, how they want to get it. So yes, I say 100%. Let the ads happen. Let them do that. Right now, there is no ad. Right now, the unions don't care what you think, AC, or what I think. They don't care. They care which politicians they buy. That's all they care about. I'd rather them have to convince us. At least we have some control. And if we screwed up, then it's actually our fault. Absolutely. I am totally okay with that. Yes. Except I get it right. Hilawe says, but unions are mandatory in New York, which is the problem. Otherwise, I wouldn't worry much about them. Correct. They are. How many teachers that sit in that gyms have you met? Me personally, I don't meet that many teachers, to be forward with you. Most of these who come to my events hate their unions. So people who like their unions don't usually come to my events. That I've only seen 2, and I happened to see 2. And this was lucky or fortunate. It's like it's fortunate. I happened to see 2 of them in a gym, and it was my daughter was taking a test to get into G&T. This is probably 12 years ago, maybe, give or take. I happened to see 2. I did not meet them. I saw them literally sitting in the gym at those little desks, sitting there reading. So I saw 2 because my daughter was taking a test that day, but I've never met any. They don't come to my events. Teachers come to my events all the time. Administrators never, but teachers do. And they actually come to my event if they don't like their unions. That's where they come to my events. So hope I answered your question at least. I don't know if that was the answer you wanted.
Wrong with the politicians. He said, for now, they feel they need to trust in something new to solve Argentina's structural problems. Argentina's central bank foreign reserves were minus $11 billion when Milei took office last year.
11. And
they've improved to minus $7 billion today, which is obviously better, but still negative.
Still terrible.
About $20 billion has re-entered the formal banking system due to a tax amnesty that encouraged the public to deposit their savings and repatriate some of their foreign savings too.
Look at that.
Many predicted that Milei would struggle to make the changes he had campaigned on due to his lack of support in Congress, opposition from powerful trade unions, and his lack of government experience. But he has managed to outperform expectations.
100%. And what I heard from so many people here in New York is, you can't have those guys in there. They got no experience. I heard that all the time. Experience is what has screwed us. Experience is what has wrecked this country. Experience is what has wrecked my state. So no, I don't care. I don't have experience. I don't care. Go in there and trash things. I'm okay.
Mostly by the use of executive powers to get around opposition in Congress.
Now, this part, people who are libertarians will be upset. They don't like it. But I got to tell you, he's not the perfect libertarian, but he's more libertarian than most.
Argentina's country risk index, a measure of the premium investors demand to hold local bonds compared to the equivalent US debt, fell below 900 basis points in October from the 2,500 basis points it had been at last year. While this is a huge improvement, it's still more than twice the risk of an emerging market bond index, so there's plenty of room for further improvement. On the campaign trail, Milei promised that the economy would grow fiercely once he eliminated capital controls and the red tape that restricts everything in Argentina.
That's what he's trying to do.
His Ministry of Deregulation began work in July.
I got to tell you, the idea of a Ministry of Deregulation is amazing. What an amazing concept. I love that. Andrea says, experience in government equals corruption. Liberty says experience equals bad experience. Yeah, both true. Agreed on both of those.
And quickly started announcing regulatory reforms daily. It's too early to decide
Daily.
if these
Wow.
changes are working today, but it's likely that they will improve the situation given the bureaucratic weight that they're lifting in Argentina, which is one of the most regulated countries in the world.
Yes.
Milei brought in a rule to reduce government delays where a requested permission is considered approved if the government does not respond to the request within a determined period of time.
Now that, by the way, is brilliant. It is the one thing that de Blasio did that I'm okay with. I do not like de Blasio as mayor of New York City at all, but one thing was okay. He said he made a rule when it came to building, because of course you have to keep real estate people happy in New York City. He said, if you don't get your, you don't get a yes or a no, I think it was 45 days, whatever number was, I forgot the number was, it's approved. That style is the idea that I brought us up actually with even pistol permits. I said, if you're not denied with a reason and a way to appeal, if you're not denied with a reason why you're denied and an appeal process in 90 days, you're approved. That's what should work. If you don't have a reason to say no, it's yes. And that's what that means, right? If I'm trying to build something, do something, operate in some way, if you don't have a reason to say no, it should be yes. That's it, right? Now, again, if you have a reason, you can have a reason, and there are reasons to say no. Here's the reason why. No, if you want an appeal, here's your process. If you don't have that, it's a yes. This makes people actually, this is one reason why the Office of Cannabis Management actually bankrupted Black people. I'm not joking. Because the Office of Cannabis Management here in New York was supposed to help out Black people. They made it up. I said that. I didn't say that. They did, right? So you have to apply for your license. Well, how the stupid process works is you have to have a lease and be paying a lease in a store before you can apply for your license. Well, if you don't have your license, you can't fill your store. So you have to pay months in advance. Not just that, it was taking 9 months to get an approval. So you have to pay rent in New York City for 9 months before you can buy a thing or sell anything. Who can afford that? Why do you think there are literally thousands of illegal smoke shops in New York City? Because they'd rather just pay the fines if they get caught than pay 9 months of rent for nothing. So don't do that. If we can't get our shit together in 30 days, the store's opened. It's done. Now, if you got a reason, let them know. That piece is very important. And I'm glad they're doing that. Even Picklebell likes it. You like the idea. I think it's the right answer. Peace, thank you for jumping aboard, brother. He says, Dr. Phil just released an interview with New York City Mayor. All right, I got to check that one out too. Let's see how he's doing.
I believe Modi brought in a similar rule in India a number of years ago, and it worked there too.
Yep.
Some early successes in Argentina include eliminating the country's rent control system.
He eliminated the country's rent control. What did it do?
Which tripled the supply of available rental apartments in Buenos Aires and caused rents to fall by 50%.
I want you to hear that, all you rent control people. All you rent control people. He ended it. Opened up rentals by 300% and rents fell by 50%. New York City has had rent control for now about 80 years or so. I forgot how long, about 80 years. And we're the most expensive place to rent. End rent controls tomorrow. He is showing us what to do. We won't do it. We won't do it.
Milei eliminated an import licensing scheme too, which caused a 35% drop in the price of home appliances and a 20% drop in the price of imported clothing.
Think about that. We have that still here. We have all kind of licensing here in New York City, specialized licensing. Get rid of it. Make things cheaper. So some things got cheaper. Not too bad, right? Kim says, what is rent controls? Literally, the government decides how much you can charge for rent. It's like price control. And that's been in New York. The concept of it wasn't a crazy concept. The original idea was they wanted to make sure that veterans coming back from World War II would have places to stay. So it was supposed to be a temporary thing for a couple of years so that veterans could come back, get a place to live, and then get jobs and then move on. That was the concept behind it. Now, look, still wrong, but I get the concept. You want to support your veterans come back from World War II. You want to give them a shot. I get the idea, right? But didn't work and they kept it forever. Yeah, kept it forever. Yes. Kim says, do they have to charge a certain amount? No, they can only charge a certain amount, and they can only charge a certain amount, and it can only go up a certain amount. And here's how it actually works. AC says, Tim, they mandate that landlords only raise fixed rent by fixed small percent every year. That's true and not true. Depends if people leave or not. And so small landlords are screwed. What does that mean? Small landlords can't afford lawsuits and thugs. And I'm not joking when I say that. So if you own like one building and it gets caught under rent control, usually I think it's 4, or 3, 1 or 2, whatever that number is, you literally cannot raise your rent more than X percent. Now, here's the worst part. The city will still tell you you have to fix your building. Well, I can't afford to fix my building. Why not? Because I can't raise my rent to fix my building. Well, no, you have to fix your building, but I can't raise my rent. Fix it. So what do? They become some slumlords. They literally just go, no, I'm not going to do it. Just give me fines and fees. I don't care. They just stack up fines and fees. Don't do it. They ignore it. You live in a slum. They don't do it. They do nothing. They let it fall apart. It's not worth it for them. They let it fall apart. Then eventually they sell it to somebody else. Some big guy has it. When a big guy gets it, he has thugs and lawyers. I'm not joking when I say this. So if you live in this place, Kim, and you're paying $700 a month, which in New York City is insanely good if you have that, the thugs come by and go, you should move. And you go, no, I'm not moving. They go, okay. I'll tell you what, I'll give you $10,000 cash if you move. I'm not joking. That actually happens. I'll give 15 grand if you move. I'm not moving. No. Okay. We're now going to start to rebuild stuff. We're going to now build stuff in front of you. And they come by at 2:00 in the morning and they start building shit so you can't sleep. I'm not joking. They harass you, make sure that they make your life miserable, because these are now companies that have thousands of units, and the people who own it, they aren't even there, which is why these equity companies should not be owning these properties anyway. Another thing that I think many of us would agree with, that's a terrible idea, but they do. So they don't actually do anything. They hire management companies who have thugs who make your life miserable. Then you leave. And when you leave, then they can raise the rent, because they can then change it. Once they make a change, they can now raise it. So they now force you out, make a change, and then shift it again. And then, of course, get stuck again. And when they get stuck again, now, again, people come by and become thugs and push you out and all those things. Rent control does not work, has never worked, is a terrible idea. And you cannot show me one time in the history of the world where rent controls actually worked. They do not work anywhere. And my governor, according to Joel, just says, Kathy Hochul wants to go statewide with rent controls. She does. She thinks statewide rent control is a good idea. It is a terrible idea. If you end rent control, but that has to be a second piece. You have to end rent control, number 1. 2, stop allowing these massive financial institutions owning these residential buildings. Let them own commercial buildings. Why have to own residential buildings? Shouldn't do that. Next piece, add on top of that, why in the world are you stopping people from building? Let people build, get rid of rent control, stop having finance companies owning all this stuff. Those 3 things, you'll be okay. You can actually fix it. And how do I know that? It happened already in Argentina. He just showed us how it works. Yes, he just showed us. So anyway, let me grab a couple more of these. Lunatic Libertarian says, landlords in Wisconsin can raise your rent by however much they want. 3-day notice, some as low as 5 days. Yeah, I'm sure they can. Is that an issue in Wisconsin? I don't know if that's an issue, right? Just because someone can doesn't mean that they do. I don't know if they do. I like to know if that's actually working or not. Right now, New York City, they can't, and it's a disaster. That's what I know. I know New York City is a disaster. Pickleball says, agree with Larry on the finance company piece of shit. Yes, they should not. That, again, you can do more than 2 things, right? You can do that, right? Absolutely. The AC says, yeah, Larry, but Argentina has a more homogenous population. You can't apply it to the United States. They actually are pretty, they're not that homogenous, believe it or not. Heavy Europeans. They're not that homogenous. I know you're teasing me, but I'm just saying that they're not one of the most homogenous countries on the planet. While Finland is like one of the most, they're not. But I know you're teasing me, but I'm just being honest with that one. Yes. Lunatic Libertarian goes on to say corporations can only be recognized as human. Wouldn't that be a good thing? Why the hell do we have companies as people? Why is that a thing? People are people. Companies aren't people. But anyway. Yeah. All right. Lorenzo says rent control removes forced landlords to lower their prices to be competitive in the housing market, hence lower prices, right? You know what winds up happening is you open up more opportunities. What actually happens? People start getting out and renting more and things overall, more things open up. Yeah, that's what winds up happening. So yeah. For Tavella says, imagine the government telling you to set a fixed price on your own apartment for several months for renting while having around 10% monthly inflation last year. Yes, that is literally New York City. Yes. And the only people who can absorb that are the massive landlords. If you have 3 to 5 units, you're devastated. You got 2 units, you're devastated. You have 1,000, 2,000 dozen units, you're good because you can absorb, mix and match. You can do it. You can absorb that if you're a big guy. You're a big guy, you are finished. And that's what happens. It winds up helping only the big guys. Correct.
The country implemented an open skies policy that increased airline competition. Previously, there had been a rule to protect the national airline that banned competitors from parking their airplanes overnight at one of the main airports in Buenos Aires. Milei's new Ministry of Deregulation, which is made up of
yeah, Pickerbell says, did a bunch of places open up because a bunch of people got evicted? No, what happens is people actually start renting, right? People, when you have rent controls like that, what winds up happening is people will not rent. It's not worth it. So why would I rent? I just lose money. So it's not worth renting. They do something else with their property, right? They do something else with their property. So, but once rent control goes away, well, now people start renting. Well, what's happening is overall the prices come down. How rent control works is some people are paying insanely small amounts. Like, I'm not making this up. A New York City apartment, which usually will go for $4,000 a month, will go for $800. Well, that person is paying $800. So this guy's got to pay $4,000. So now I'm putting a new one on the market. They're going to say, you pay $800. I'm not doing it. Forget it. Don't bother. It's fine. I'm not even going to do it. I'll do something else with it. I'll rent it out as something else. I'll make it a commercial space. I'll do something else because that doesn't fall under rent control. But now that there's no more rent control. So 800 can easily go to 3,000 or 2,000. What happens? The 4,000 comes down too. Because often people in one building will have 2 or 3 rent controlled and then 2 or not. Well, now they all average out. They begin to average out. So that 8 people paying 800, people aren't paying 100. They start paying 1,000, 1,200. But the 4,000 start paying 3,000, 2,000. That's what winds up happening. So that winds up to happen, right? But again, AC brings up the point. As long as you don't allow too big of the players from the collude. 100%. That's why I say it can't just be that. Most of these problems aren't one single fix. There are multiple fixes. You've got to do 3, 4, 5 things together, and then it begins to work. So, yeah. Let's see here. The Libertarian Lady says, I'm connected to the local real estate market in Jacksonville. I knew small landlords that had to sell their small portfolio during COVID lockdowns when the government said they couldn't evict. Yes, rent control is worse. Agreed. It winds up trashing everything. So, yes. Kim says, charge $800 rent and $3,200 a month for the key. Well, I like that. That's pretty good. See, Kim, you're thinking. You are thinking. I like that.
And economists say that cutting red tape is improving economic freedom and reducing opportunities for corruption in the country. Despite Milei's libertarian stance on issues like private...
Hold on. AC says, yes, because landlords are influenced for lowering rent. When there's competition, yes, they do. That's literally a fact. Right? If there's competition, that's a fact. That's how that works. Yes, that's true. If there are more people putting their apartments out for rent and their rents are lower, they will lower rent. That literally happens. Yes. Now, they don't lower rent when they don't have to. I mean, they don't voluntarily do this. You're right. They don't go, you know what? I feel good about life. Let me lower my rent. No. But you see them on housing, buying houses. You see housing prices come down. What, because people like selling their houses at lower prices? No, because they can't move the house unless they lower the price. So they lower it. Rentals the same. You will see rentals come down. You can literally go to certain places and you'll see rental prices do come down here or there depending upon where you are. And depending, of course, also to your earlier point. Does that mean that larger companies are owning things? If they are, no. Yeah, I see goes to supply and demand. Yes. I mean, for existing tenants, no, they leave. You're right. They negotiate or leave. Here's what happens, and I don't know if you've done it as well. I have. I did it for commercial, to be forward, but you could do it for residential. You do it done for commercial. I tell my landlord, dude, I'm not going to pay you, $5,000 a month. What do you mean? That was a deal. I know, but I can go downstairs and do it, whatever, across the street, whatever, and get 3,000. I'm not paying you $5,000, man. Well, no, you have to. Then they sue me, dude. I'm not going to pay you $5,000. I'm just not doing it. All right, what are we going to do? And boom, $4,500. That happens commercial like all the time. People renegotiate stuff commercially all the time. Now, would they do it residentially? No, but they would do it when the lease ends. So now, AC, I'm renting from you, and I'm paying $3,000 a month, and my lease ends. Well, dude, I'm not. You go, I'm gonna raise your rent, Larry. It's another year. You were $3,000, now you're $3,100. No, you're not. I'm not paying that. What do you mean? I'm not paying that. In fact, I'm paying $2,800, or I'm moving. And you say to yourself, if Larry leaves and the market rate is $2,600, and I'll get $2,600 from the next guy, or I'll get $2,800 from Larry, and I know him, $2,800. I'm good. That's how that would work. So it wouldn't happen overnight. It would happen over time. I hope that was clearer, I guess. I hope that was clearer. So I don't know if that made sense or not. I hope it did.
And deregulation. There are concerns that he has a less libertarian approach to issues like policing and freedom of speech.
It's true. He's not a
He announced a
libertarian.
plan
You're
a
right.
few months ago to use face recognition software to deal with protesters
Not
and
happy.
AI to predict, detect, and investigate crimes, which the press has compared to the film Minority Report.
Not wrong.
Milei spent $300 million buying 24 fighter jets in April, saying that they are needed to guarantee Argentina's control of its airspace.
He got some military industrial complex going on. I know, not perfect. I'm not condoning this at all. Not at all.
This doesn't make an awful lot of sense during a period of austerity when all other spending is
Not
being
wrong.
slashed. Investors have been impressed with the changes in Argentina, and this can be seen in credit spreads and the fact that the national stock index has soared almost 140% this
That's
year.
something good.
Milei has been working to attract business investment, which is badly needed to boost economic growth. Domestic businesses are happy with Milei's reforms, but foreign investors are still in a wait-and-see mode, as
Yes,
there
they're
have been many false dawns in Argentina over the last 100 years. Capital controls, which limit the flow of foreign exchange into and out of the country,
Like tariffs and such.
are still in place and do deter international investors, as no one wants to invest in a country where you can't get your money back when you want it.
Oh, that kind
Milei's
of stuff. Sorry,
government
wrong one.
still
Sorry.
sets the exchange rate too, and there is a lot less talk about dollarizing the economy today than there.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's going to dollarize the economy. I mean, it probably sounded good when he first said that, but I'm not sure he's going to actually do it. And look, I'll go back to the same thing. Are the Argentinians happy? That's the question.
last
Or
year.
satisfied.
Milei
Satisfied.
devalued the peso by more than 50% last December, and then by another 2% each month since. But the currency is still overvalued, according to most economists. Devaluing the peso rapidly again would cause a spike in inflation, but a weaker peso would also make the country's exports more attractive to foreign buyers.
And that's what he wants.
Milei argues that he can't risk floating the peso until there's a large supply of hard currency in the central bank.
He does not trust the central bank. I get it. It's happened more than once. They have just printed money like there's no tomorrow, gone into debt, and literally just defaulted. I understand
to
that.
calm markets and prevent a run, which would trigger inflation. While the fiscal picture has improved massively, Argentina still faces significant external financial pressure, with more than $14 billion of debt repayments due next year alone, with essentially no chance of the country borrowing more on international markets.
That's the issue, right? Here's what he has to do to avoid this crash. He has to get the rest of the world to trust him enough to say, all right, we'll renegotiate. All right, we'll renegotiate. Because him having to pay that $14 billion back next year is going to crush him. That is going to crush him. He's got to be able to get them to go, can we renegotiate? That's the issue. Yes. Kim says, get rid of central bank. That's his goal. You can see but he can't do it right away. It's impossible to do it right away. It's not realistic. So yes, 100%. Is it Nahul says too many times, have it? Yes, absolutely. Too many times. People have to begin to trust him. And I think they're starting to trust him. I think they are. Liberty or Death says price controls always result in higher prices and small supply every single time. Every time. But we keep doing it. Every time. Well, let me be very clear. We do it because there's a short-term gain. There's a short-term gain. Like right at that moment, we get a gain. Then it's all gone.
Until the economy is a lot stronger. Argentina still has too much foreign exchange debt relative to its limited export base and foreign exchange reserves. And while the fiscal balance of the government has improved hugely, the central bank balance sheet still has negative net reserves.
Yep.
Milei has done an amazing job on the fiscal front. It's very unusual for a country to voluntarily do a bigger fiscal consolidation than the IMF asked for.
And this is why I bring this up. If he does a bigger consolidation than the IMF asked for, he's actually got a shot of negotiating his debts next year. Remember, this goes back to what I was talking about negotiating, right? People think you can't negotiate. You can. You can, right? You can go back and say, I'm Argentina. I can just not pay you. Like I've done this before, right? I can just go, no, I'm not paying you. So here's your choice. I can just not pay you, or we can renegotiate. Do you trust me enough? And hopefully they go, yes, I trust you enough. Let's renegotiate. So remember, there's always the option of just not paying. Again, you're Argentina. You've done it before, but you owe me money. All right, good luck. I just bought some new fighter jets. You want to go to war? No, we're not doing it. So I do think that he has a shot of doing that, and that's the key. And the second piece I'll bring up here again is, as a whole, while some Argentinians have been hurt by him, of course, they've lost their jobs. They're struggling. That's true. Overall, Argentinians actually have hope. Overall, Argentinians actually believe that this can actually work for them and they can go find their glory again. They can MAGA for them, make Argentina great again.
The challenge now is that things will only get more difficult going forward, as the terms of the most recent debt restructuring in 2020 gave Argentina 5 years of breathing space. But that is about to run out next year.
This is my whole point. He has a reason to negotiate now. This might go back to what this might go back to what AZ was talking about, right? At this point, if he was more of an anti-American, they might try to sabotage these talks. But he's been very savvy. He's pro-American. He's all about Trump. He's like Trump's greatest guy. He's all pro-American. Well, he's all pro-American. What does that mean? CIA's not going to get involved in that. Trump's not going to get involved. Trump's like, yeah, get that guy. Yeah. They're going to be behind him, right? And Europe is totally worried about Ukraine. Europe is all about Ukraine. Europe does not care about China at all. So they're not going to fight him. He's got an actual chance of renegotiating this and getting Argentina out of it because of how savvy he's been being all buddy-buddy with Trump. That was a smart move for him. I know some of you don't like it. I'm just saying for him, smart move.
And they'll have to start paying about $3 billion a year on their international bonds. The core problem for Argentina is that the foreign exchange balance sheet does not look good. There are no non-borrowed foreign exchange reserves sitting at the central bank, and the country has huge foreign currency obligations and a small export base to earn the necessary foreign exchange. While Milei wants to solve the problems without restructuring, Argentina's debt structure does need to reflect the
100%.
nation's economic constraints. Milei's free market reforms have gone as well as they could have gone, especially given the scale of the problem that he's dealing with. And the people of Argentina seem to have regained a lot of lost faith in
That's a
their
huge
government.
piece.
There is still a very tough road ahead for the country, and a huge challenge for Milei will be to ensure that voters stick with him as he implements the needed reforms. If you found this interesting, you should watch my video.
There we go. I hope that was a good piece for you guys to see what I was thinking. Why is it probably 6 or 7 videos like this on in the internet if you want to check it, and on YouTube and check them out. But I thought those 2 were the most interesting. That's why I used those 2. So I hope it does work. So AC says, well, he's also libertarian, capitalist. They only take you out if you're a communist or socialist, but lefty. Often true, but not always, but often true. But in this case, being happy with Trump is a good thing. I think that's a good thing for him, right? Trump won, and he's buddies with Trump. Smart move. So good for him. Picker says, okay, but I'm going to ask a real question here. Does he still wear the superhero outfit? Yes, he does. Yes, he is a character. And this is the thing that people often tease me about. They say things like, well, Larry, isn't it always about the policies? It isn't always. It's often about the person. I see this right now in America. And there are a lot of people who are Republicans who don't get this. A lot of Republicans in America think that America likes Republicans all of a sudden. That's not true. America doesn't all of a sudden like Republicans. That's not a thing. Now, some Americans like Republicans, obviously. But what Americans saw who shifted, those that shifted, didn't go, I love Republicans. That's not what they did. They said, 1, I don't like my guy or gal in this case. I don't like my gal in this case. That was number 1. But number 2, it was the personality of Trump. That's what it was. It was the personality, right? It wasn't just that I always love Republicans. How do I know that? Because in places like where I live, there were thousands of people who voted for AOC and Trump. Thousands of them that voted for AOC and Trump. Thousands. I mean, not like millions, but thousands. That's a lot of people. And in the case of just my area, multiply that thousands by 50 states, and you've got from just a Trump victory to a Trump winning the popular vote, right? Because of that. So I do think things like the superhero outfit and such, I think it does matter. Olivia Des says, Harris's personality is drier than a popcorn passing a wind. I didn't know that was dry, but okay. I'll trust you that it is. I'm keto, so I don't eat popcorn, so I wouldn't know. Anyway, my point being, I think that matters also. Personality really does matter in these issues. I think we often don't think it matters as much, but a guy like him, the next thing is if a guy like him wins, you get a mandate because he's so far out of the norm that by default, a victory by him is a mandate. There's the next piece. So overall, let me ask you, if I could, please click the button known as Lima, India, Kilo, Echo, like, please do so. If you're watching on Twitter or Facebook, please share this. It does matter. If you have not subscribed to me on YouTube, please do so. It is important to do so. Also, please, if you want a super chat, it goes right to the front, obviously, and you want to become a member, $4 per month, click that join button. Membership matters. I do more of this and less of other things. So I like to do more of this. So please do that if you can. It does make sense. I know some of you like Milei very much and think he's kind of some superhero. He is not, but he is still more libertarian than we have here. And he is showing us that some of these things can actually work. They can actually work. And he's showing us that they can work. That's number 1. Number 2, this took pain. That people are still hurt. Making change is going to have a lot of problems. And if we do it in New York State, and I always talk about New York State because what happens in New York State will come to you. New York State is going out of its way to become Argentina. And some people who are going, that's a great idea. It is a terrible idea. How do I know this? Because New York State's going further and further into debt. Government spending is increasing. And more importantly than anything else, people are leaving my state in droves. Even though we took in 200,000 migrants this year, we will still have a net loss to my population in my state. I want you to think about that for a moment. We took in 200 migrants I'm sorry, 200,000. Sorry, 200,000 migrants in New York State this year. 200,000 that we know of. There may be more, but at least 200,000 migrants came into my state, and we will still lose population this year. We're leaving in droves, not just the wealthy, not just the poor, not just the middle class, of all classes. We are leaving like there's no tomorrow. This does not work. It cannot work. For those of you who attacked Milei, there are reasons to attack him. He is doing some things that are not great, and I say that openly. Is he successful? Overall, without question, yes. Some of you got mad. Said, well, he supports Israel, or he supports Ukraine, or whatever I forgot which one he supports, whatever he supports. I don't care. Let me repeat that. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And you shouldn't either. You should care if he can fix Argentina. Argentina is not going to invade Ukraine or Russia or Gaza or Israel. Who cares? They're not going to invade any of those places. They're not going to give money. They're broke. They're not going to give any money in these places. They're not supporting anybody. It is just a virtue signal of whether he supports A or B. Who cares whether he supports A or B? He's not going to give them anything except, I don't know, wave it, maybe put a costume on and do a dance. That's it. He's not giving them any money. He's not sending any troops. He's not bombing anybody. Who cares? What matters is, can he fix Argentina? And more importantly, can he show us a better way? America is not on the way to that. But something else. The thing about Argentina and America that's similar is both countries have been and are now tired of the establishment. So which way will they go? Which way will we go? Now, the AC and I have chatted back and forth, things we agree and disagree with. But you know what we both agree upon? Let's stop having the fat cats make all the money and control everything. That we agree on. Let's have the average American do better. That we agree upon. Can we figure out a way to do that? And the current system is failing. That we agree upon. Can we mix and match and find the right answers? I hope so. That's why I'm so crazy I keep doing the show. I keep showing you things that I hope matter. I keep talking about things like happiness, making people happy, changing things to make things better. I keep talking about it, and I'm hoping people listen. I'm hoping eventually people start doing the things that I asked them to do, or at least moving forward in one way or the other. Guys, please, when we are done, please leave a comment if you would. I'll be back on tomorrow at 7 p.m. yet again. Thank you guys so much for giving me a chunk of your evening. I will see you all